All right, the time is 6:47. I apologize for the late start. But a quorum being present, I call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have approval for September 24th, 2025, and January 7th, 2026. Any comments on these minutes?
No, I thought they were fine.
Seem pretty straightforward. If there's no discussion, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Your microphone is off. Can you just,
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Next item on the agenda is, we're actually going to continue this. This is, the applicant has requested to continue to the February 18th, 2026 meeting. This is a request for certificate of compliance for Kazanjian Enterprises, Inc., 2512 Main Street, Assessors Map 94, Lot 65, DEP file number 305-1111. Could I have a motion to continue this to the next meeting on February 18th, 2026?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. All right, agenda item B is a public hearing, notice of intent for Andrew Cole, 396 Transmission Line Row, DEP file number 305-1224. And if you could just introduce yourself, and then the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Hannah Raditz, wetland scientist with BSC. I'll go through a quick summary of the project and just walk through step by step. I know it seems like a relatively large project, but just to open it, this is a maintenance project. So what ACR stands for is Asset Condition Refurbishment, which essentially just boils down to the maintenance of existing assets, those being the utility poles on the 397 line. So this project spans multiple towns. It goes from the Tewksbury 22 and 22A substation all the way up to the Ward Hill substation in Haverhill. Within Tewksbury, it's a relatively small section of the project, only about 1.9 miles. Again, going from the Tewksbury 22A and 22 substation to the Andover border. Much of the work within Tewksbury involves temporary construction matting to access these poles, the replacement of 5 poles, though in the narrative I just noticed it says 6. It's 5 utility structures will be replaced, and the maintenance of the majority of those poles. Some additional work is proposed in order to improve the right-of-way, and this still falls under maintenance. This has to do with access improvements. So on the right-of-way, there's existing stone access. Some of it is eroded quite a bit. So the priority for this project, as well as replacing these structures and the associated wires associated with them, to increase the communications between substations and fiber connectivity for the region, is also improving this access. This will allow them to get to these structures in the future. Not all of them can easily be accessed because of the large wetlands within Tewksbury, but for those where they can easily get overland access, they want to improve these access roads for the construction and for the future to allow them to get on and off the right-of-way. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts here, but I'll just back up a bit. Much of this work is exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Tewksbury bylaw, this being maintenance activities. So that's the in-kind replacement of those structures that I mentioned, being 5, as well as the overhead maintenance work that just requires replacing wires and other equipment on these poles, as well as the improvement of access or the maintenance of access. So that just involves access type R. You might have noticed on the plan there's like a solid orange line. Those are the access where it's already about 12 feet wide, which is enough for modern vehicles to get on and off the right-of-way, so they just need to top it with some stone. So all of that work is considered exempt maintenance, but in addition, this project also qualifies as a limited project for an overhead utility project, so long as BMPs are used, which is the goal of this project. Again, the purpose of this project is to address some asset issues. For many of the poles along this line, they're wooden and have been subject to avian and insect damage, as well as other natural causes, the wind and cold weather. So the purpose of upgrading them to these steel structures is that they are, number one, more resilient in the face of wind and ice, as well as avian and insect damage, but also they are more properly grounded. Their foundations will be improved so that they have better resilience against lightning damage. And as I mentioned earlier, they need to upgrade this overhead equipment as well for connectivity between the substations, as well as fiber connectivity for the region. So all in all, the purpose of this project is for an eye on the future for this line in the region as it connects to many other utility lines and communities. Just to summarize what's most important, the activities that are not exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Tewksbury bylaw, these are those activities that are subject to review, which are called out in Section 3 of the narrative. And Table 3-1 was probably the most useful way to just see the list of these impacts. These impacts are associated with a couple types of access. One of them is the type S access. That's the access shown that has the orange and red lining. This is access where it's not quite 12 feet wide, so the purpose is to widen it up to that 12 feet width to get modern construction vehicles on and off the right-of-way safely. So they'll need to do limited grading and expansion of stone. There's also type 1 access. This is where access has eroded so much that they'll need to do some grading and a placement of aggregate stone at the base. Within Tewksbury, it's mostly just those entrances to the right-of-way that could use some help by the substation, by roads within the right-of-way. This will also allow a proper construction entrance on and off the right-of-way to be catching that sediment, so it's needed for multiple purposes. There's also a temporary access, which is called out as improve as necessary. This sounds a little deceptive, but essentially it's a temporary access. And the purpose for this access, which will be restored after, is to pull the OPGW, so that's the optical ground wire, underneath the circuit. So between each pole, there's the wire, and when you've got underslung OPGW, you need to physically pull it underneath between the poles. This can be done by someone on foot or with a low PSI vehicle, but in some cases there's wetlands in between, so the plan is to either mat this or walk it through if it's a dry season, just to clear some brush maybe out of the way, but either, in all cases, it'll be restored fully. So they expect to just have to mow this to create a walkable path and mat within wetlands, especially if it's too deep for just walking through. The last type of activity that's subject to review is the improved work pads. So you might have noticed on the ER maps, there is a red outline for some of these work pads. These are work pads where the grade is slightly sloped. In order to create a safe work area for structure replacements and overhead work, they'll need to do an unlimited amount of grading to create as flat of an area as they can. They'll often bring in gravel to create an even more stable surface. And this will be contained by sediment and erosion controls to keep the limit of work area to 75 by 75 for many of these structures as they're maintenance only, but up to 125 by 125. But most of those work pads that are larger are already in wetlands or close to it, so we're proposing to mat them anyways. But further down with the gravel, so some gravel is proposed to remain. This is going to be only on the structures that are on graded pads, just to allow for future access. However, this gravel will be allowed to revegetate. It's just to keep that stable subbase so that they can get up to the pole for future maintenance work. And for work pads that are graded within riverfront area, which there are some in Tewksbury, they will remove all the stone and loam and seed. And those within buffer zone, they'll just keep that 50 by 50 stone under the structure for access. And then the rest of the working pad, they will add loam and seed, just like within riverfront area, to restore that area. Getting to the end, I promise. So we also did request a waiver under your bylaw, and this has to do with a limited amount of non-exempt work within the right-of-way, within the 0 to 25-foot buffer zone and the 0 to 50-foot buffer zone. As we listed in the table, this includes the types of access as well as graded pads. For the most part, I think we've just got improve as necessary type access. That's again going to be temporary only. Type S, which is a minor expansion, it's typically going to be 2 to 4 feet on either side of the access to get that up to 12 feet wide. And graded work pads. The main source of these graded work pads within these inner portions of the buffer zone are at structure 8 and 16. With these work pads, we did trim them down as much as possible, so they are, I think both of them are 75 by 75 feet, rather than 125 by 125, so we did try to trim this down in this area as much as physically possible. Finally, getting to the timeline. So this work will be confined to one growing season, so March of 2027 to February of 2028 is the period that this work will be going on. This will start with vegetation maintenance, access road work, and the installation of matting, then quickly moving on to the work pad work, so that's grading work pads and mowing them, and then drilling the bases of the structures for those that will be replacing those structures, and then finally overhead work and restoration. So all the mats should be pulled within the winter. So by the first growing season after, the vegetation will be able to bounce back. So again, in summary, the majority of this work is temporary. A lot of matting is proposed because of the complex wetlands within Tewksbury. However, many of these wetlands in Tewksbury are a good mix of PEM or emergent vegetation and PSS with a shrubby outlying edge. So we expect that the PEM wetlands will bounce back within a year, and those shrubby wetlands might take a little bit longer. But in locations where we're not seeing that springing back fast enough to 75% revegetation or more, National Grid can provide wetland seed mix, an additional hay topping to cover these areas. And with that, we typically see an even faster regrowth of vegetation within the work areas. So with all that said, I'll turn it over to the commission for any questions.
I guess the modern vehicles you're referencing, those are typical like work trucks and stuff. Besides for like, are you bringing heavy equipment to actually dig down into where the structures are going to be?
Yes, so that could include everything from a crane to drills. These drills are often on tracks, so they're easy to get up and down the road, but 12 feet wide is typically the minimum they want for safety, not only for those drill trucks and the cranes to get the bucket trucks up, but also for concrete trucks. That's sometimes the trickiest thing on the right-of-way, and a lot of reason why, in many cases, they want to improve these access, because it's difficult to get a concrete truck down these stone lanes on the right-of-way.
I see all the swamp mats you're bringing in.
Oh, right now?
I live right by there.
Gotcha. It might be another project, so nothing is currently proposed
Oh,
out
no,
there.
no big deal.
But I know there's so many utility lines out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so besides the initial work of constructing everything, most heavy equipment's not going to be, like for maintenance, you're just going to walk or drive a normal size vehicle over there and stuff?
So for the maintenance work, it does sound deceptive. They will need to have those bucket trucks up there.
All right.
They'll usually have a couple on either side. And in the cases where they have, you might see rectangular pads that are adjacent to the work pads. Those are called pull pads. Those are used where they'll have a spool set up, so they'll be pulling from one direction to another. So there is still large equipment out there, but these work pads out in the large wetlands especially, we have at least 125 by 125 work pads. That's large enough for these equipment to get in and out. And the construction matting is about 16 feet wide, which is plenty to get any of the equipment they would need in and out safely.
And then, so the roads you mentioned is going to be a mix of not riprap, but stones put down, and then it would be left to overgrow, essentially. You'll still be able to, anybody would be able to see, this is a road, but it's just going to be covered with natural vegetation, essentially.
Essentially, what the right-of-way looks like right now, which you can't see too well because of the snow, is how it will look eventually. These access roads, I don't believe, have been maintained in at least a decade or so. So they're at the point where they need refurbishment, but they're not going to be paved or anything. This can be encroached upon with vegetation, and sediment will fill them in too to make them more crossable. But you're right, it's usually a largish riprap or a mixture of gravel.
And then, can you just briefly go over like the size of the structures? It's going from wooden, poles to steel structures. Like, what's the
Yep.
height and weight of difference? of
Ooh,
these?
the height. So the height is probably about the same. That would be a good question for the engineers, and I don't have the work lists in front of me, but essentially, these are like-for-like structures because the equipment that these are upholding, the circuit, is about the same weight, still the same tension, so you need a structure that is equivalent to what's out there. Right now, some of the structures are replaced with steel. I think it was part of a project a few years ago.
Probably the
But
mast
some of
that
them
you see.
remaining are wood. Yep, so those remaining that are wood can vary quite a bit in their width. Some of these are 2-pole and some are 3. It has to do with the tension of the circuit. But essentially, those that are out there right now are probably about 7 to 13 feet in diameter. So no, scratch that. They're about half of that because these were the numbers I wrote down for the difference. So when you're replacing them with steel, there's a 7 to 3 foot diameter increase compared to the wooden ones. Those vary quite a bit because they're natural trees, but the increase overall within the town would be very small. Those within wetlands, you're going to experience a small increase. So there's 2 structure replacements that are in buffer zone that are replaced with direct embed, which is a smaller base. That's a culvert that they'll put in the ground that holds this steel structure. So those ones are the ones experiencing the smaller increase, 7 to 13 feet in diameter. But those within the wetlands closest to the substation, these need to be replaced with a concrete base. The reason for this is due to the condition of that wetland being deep and mucky, they need something more solid, but also the tension that's on those wires there. So that's where you're seeing a larger increase, 37 to 43 square feet in diameter. But taking the existing size of those poles within wetlands and what they're proposed to be replaced with, you're looking at only 183 square feet an increase within the wetlands and fill, as they'll be pulling out what's existing and replacing with that larger concrete foundation. So in all, it's smaller, and the payout is a longer-term structure within the wetland that won't need to be replaced, hopefully for 100 years.
I like if we don't have to do this again for quite some time.
That's definitely the hope with this project, and a lot of these wooden structures that you'll see around Massachusetts, I'm assuming will be phased out eventually because these steel structures are far easier to maintain. And like I said, it's great to have that resiliency against wind, ice, lightning, as well as avian and insect without having to do as much maintenance.
And then finally, there's no fencing that goes around these structures. And you can only access them from a bucket truck. You can't, are there any, rungs on any of these to climb up or anything like that?
There are rungs, but they're high up. They're designed so that it's not easy for someone to go.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting
They're
at.
quite a distance up in the air. They'd have to do some serious wrangling to get up to those rungs, from my experience. They clearly don't want people to be
Yeah.
climbing up these. Yep, so that shouldn't be a concern.
You only go up once.
Yeah.
Don't want to come back down.
Any other questions or comments from the
No,
commission?
I think she's answered everything I need to know.
I just had a question, Dan. In the special conditions, actually, this might be more for Abby, but in the special conditions, there are going to be monthly status reports. Does that include after the construction is done and the, plants are being monitored for restoration? Or-
Yeah, so that's up to the commission. I think at this point, the SWIP inspections that we'll have to run on this project will be at least weekly. It could be more than that. We could have inspectors out there on a daily basis. So I anticipate that we would be out there to do the initial reflag. That's before the vegetation mowing and the sediment controls and the access work goes in. To be out there when the sediment controls are installed to inspect them, and then we'll be out there weekly until restoration occurs. And at that point, we'll probably shift to quarterly inspections. So you could get certainly easily a monthly inspection during that year of construction, and then quarterly inspections afterwards until the certificate of compliance can be filed.
Thanks. Is that good with you?
I mean, yeah, as proposed, it was intended, and the commission doesn't have to take them if they don't want them, but the proposal of that condition was just for during the construction period. Once everything's kind of stable, I
And it's
didn't,
quarterly, then it's like quarterly reports?
however often you all feel is necessary.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Are you guys?
I'm good.
All right. Just want to make sure I have the correct conditions. I'm just going to read out the special conditions, and then it's at a public hearing, so I'll open it up after that. Excuse me. So, conditions to accompany the order of conditions issued for DEP file number 305-1224. From when construction first commences until project completion, a minimum of monthly status reports or quarterly status reports shall be submitted to the conservation agent, which summarizes pertinent site information such as construction progress and maintenance of erosion and sediment controls. Prior to any construction activity commencing, the following must be completed. ESCs shall be installed by the applicant or an agent of the applicant, and the conservation agent shall inspect and approve of the installed ESCs. Coordinate with the conservation agent prior to construction first commencing, and then if there are any pertinent wetland impact, or if there's any permanent wetland impact, the applicant must construct a wetland replication. This is to be constructed and monitored for 2 years. The applicant shall work closely with the Conservation Commission agent at the time of the wetland replication to assess the final replication location. Are you comfortable with all of that?
Yep, that'll work.
All right. If there's no more discussion from the commission, I will open it up to the public. This is a public hearing. I just ask that you go up to the podium and introduce yourself. Not hearing anybody or not seeing anybody get up, I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. And could I have a motion to approve this notice of intent as discussed at this meeting?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time. It's much
Thank you.
appreciated.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, notice of intent and land disturbance for Andrew Stack, 62 Carlton Road and 0 Hill Street, Assessors Map 107 and 97, lots 40 and 1, DP file number 305-1225. And it doesn't say in the official title, but this is for Molly and Poplar Drive. I just ask that you introduce yourselves for the record, and then the floor is yours.
Andrew Stack, Tewksbury Department of Public Works.
Hi, Alex Patterson, Senior Ecologist at EA Engineering. I'm also joined by my colleague Amy Hunt from EA, who's our engineer of record for the project. So I did have a slide presentation, if it'd be okay to go ahead and share. So this project really got started over 15 years ago and was kind of born out of a natural resource damage settlement related to the Sutton Brook disposal area. As a result of that settlement, the trustees, which are Mass DEP and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, became responsible for using the settlement funds of about $1.65 million to compensate for damages to the environment that occurred as a result of the activities at the Superfund site. And so subsequently, Mass DEP and the Fish and Wildlife Service undertook an environmental assessment and alternatives analysis to evaluate different options for using the settlement funding to provide the maximum benefit to wetland resources within Tewksbury. And as a result of that, after reviewing multiple different sites and different types of projects, the two projects that we're proposing tonight were selected as the alternatives that would provide the most benefit using the settlement funding. So that process was completed in March of 2023, and then the following year, Mass DEP awarded a grant to the town to fund the implementation of the project, and subsequently the town hired EA to complete the design and permitting. Between the fall of 2024 and spring of 2025, we completed some initial site assessments, including topographic survey and wetland delineation. And in June of 25, we completed our preliminary engineering design for the project. In September of last year, we held our first public meeting and a site walk at the Poplar Street site to review the proposed work with the community. As a result of some of the input we heard at that meeting, we did make some changes to the proposed design. And in October, we completed our detailed design, which is what was submitted with the NOI. And then in December, we held a follow-up public meeting, and in January, submitted our permit applications. So this map just shows the location of the two project sites within the town. And just point out that the majority of both sites are located within the FEMA 100-year flood zone. So a key goal of the project, which you'll see in the following several slides, is the removal of historical fill from the flood zone to help restore flood storage capacity, as well as restore historical wetlands that have been filled. So starting with the Poplar Street site, the overall work area is about, Molly Drive site. The overall work area is about 1 acre in size. The site was formerly used as a contractor yard and was acquired by the town. There was a small soil remediation completed a few years ago, but you can see the areas outlined in orange are the approximate location of soil berms that had been developed prior to the town's ownership of the site, basically soil just being kind of pushed around and dumped on site, some of which was placed within wetlands along the Shawshene River, and the rest placed within the 100-year floodplain of the river. So the overall goal of the work at this site is to remove those soil berms, restore historic wetlands and floodplains. There's also a good amount of scattered debris across the site, which we are proposing to remove just to improve sort of habitat and safety and aesthetics. And then all disturbed areas will be planted and seeded with native species. So just a few photos of the Molly Drive site, just showing some of the debris. There's a lot of truck tires, just kind of scrap metal, lots of just assorted things that have been dumped there over the years. It's a little hard to sort of see the berms unless you're kind of standing there, but in this photo you can kind of see one of the berms in the distance, which is causing a very steep slope right down to the riverbank. And so the work area at Molly Drive is relatively small. We have two areas of proposed berm removal, which you'll see a little bit easier on the next slide, but two areas of proposed grading. One is right along the bank of the river, and the other one is just slightly to the left and below that. The rest of the project is basically the area that's kind of stippled, and that is really just kind of going in and doing selective removal of debris that's visible on the ground surface. So at the Molly Drive site, we're proposing about 550 cubic yards of fill removal, and the areas and the depths of the fill removal is largely based on sort of an evaluation of topography. In a lot of cases, the berms are pretty obvious. There's also a previous effort to do soil borings at the site, which helped understand the depth of fill that would need to be removed to get back to the native wetland soils. So about 7,200 square feet, or about 0.2 acres of work to remove fill within this site. And that will result in about 2,900 square feet of shrub swamp restoration, about just under 1,000 square feet of forested wetland restored, and almost 3,000 square feet of upland forest and floodplain restoration. There's about 330 square feet of excavation within the BVW just along the edge. That's just mainly to get the grades to sort of tie in. So that area will remain wetland. There will just be just a few inches basically of grading along that edge to get the grades to tie in. We did have visual renderings prepared for both sites. So this is a rendering showing the Molly Drive site from the river, where it would be a little easier to see. And so it's a little hard to visualize, but basically that area where you see the trees having been planted is where the berm would be today. So instead of being a very steep drop-off down to the river, it's a much more gradual transition from the riverbank to the upland, which is what would have existed previously. And so moving to the Poplar Street site, work area is about 3.1 acres. This is the former site of the Tewksbury South Street well fields. There's been extensive historical alterations to this site. There are a number of isolated wetlands along the east side of that existing path that have been severed from sort of the large wetland system that flows through the site due to historic filling. There's also a number of linear berms right along the edges of wetlands that have been placed within historic wetland areas. And so similar to the Molly Drive site, the overall goal here is really to remove historic fill, improve flood storage capacity, restore wetland acreage, improve wildlife habitat, and the other functions and benefits that go along with that. So a few photos of the Poplar Street site. This is the roadway kind of leading into the site, looking back towards Poplar Street. And then this is after making that sort of 90-degree turn, heading north. Here you can see one of the soil berms kind of in the center background of the photo. And there's a larger one actually even in the back right-hand corner that's right along the edge of the wetland. So this is the large wetland system that's kind of to the northwest of where all the work is proposed. That's where the isolated wetlands would have been connected in the past, and we're hoping to help reestablish those connections through the fill removal. There's also some limited recreational improvements, primarily in the northern end of the site. So there's currently a very steep eroding slope in the northern part of the site that we're proposing to install a series of steps to just make that access a little bit more stabilized. We're also proposing a few benches up in that area. But the main portion of the work is primarily the fill removal, and so you're seeing kind of the northern edge of that on the sheet. In that cross-section view, you can really clearly see kind of the soil berm. So on the left-hand side is sort of the existing wetland elevation, right around 80. On the right-hand side is kind of the native ground surface, and then it goes all the way up to like 88, 89 feet at the top of that berm. So we'd be removing that and improving hydrologic connectivity and restoring wetlands that have been filled. So this is the sort of southern part of the site. You can see more of the proposed grading here. The access is primarily along the existing roadway. There's going to be some short access spurs that go off through the forested areas to get to some of these berms, but we're trying to target those to avoid any unnecessary tree removal. And then this is kind of the whole grading approach for the entirety of the Poplar Street site. So you're seeing all the different areas of berms that are proposed to be removed. So a total of about 6,176 cubic yards of fill removed across 1.3 acres, which would restore about 0.6 acres of shrub wetland, about 0.2 acres of forested wetland, and 0.5 acres of floodplain restoration. We do, again, have some excavation within the BVW right along those edges, but those areas will continue to be wetlands. There'll just be a small amount of excavation right along that proposed edge. We also have a temporary crossing of the wetland to access that fill removal area at the very southern end. That's basically like an island kind of in the middle of the swamp. So there'll be some temporary timber matting going across there, which would be removed at the end of the project. We're also proposing 2 stone fords at this site. So I mentioned there's a series of isolated wetlands, and we're trying to reconnect those with the larger wetland system. The town also wanted to maintain the ability to get light vehicles through the site for maintenance and cases of emergencies or things like that. So we looked at a few different options for how that could be achieved and decided that stone fords would be the best way to go. It basically maintains the ability for people to use this as a pedestrian trail. You can drive over them, but they're sort of semi-permeous. Water can flow through them, and they'll be kind of lowered, as you can see in this rendering, so that in the event of a storm and water is filling up the isolated pocket wetlands, it can still flow over the stone ford and kind of restore that hydrologic connectivity. So this is just another rendering of where one of the stone fords would go looking along the trail. So all the fill removal areas will be planted and seeded. The goal is to restore those areas to maintain a planting density of about 500 trees and shrubs per acre on average. So at the Poplar Street site, we're proposing 428 new saplings and 237 new shrubs. And at Molly Drive, 32 saplings and 49 shrubs. All those species are native to eastern Massachusetts, and all areas of soil disturbance would get a seed mix, either wetland or upland species, depending on the area. So just the overall project sequence, kind of talked about sort of the earlier phases of the work. We're hoping to get into final design this spring and go out to bid this summer. The tree removal would not be able to occur until, I believe, mid-October to November to avoid impacts to federally listed bat species. So we're hoping for a construction start, ideally in sort of late fall to early winter of this year. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, my first question is going to be how close to the river, but it seems very, very close. Like that rendering was, it's not hidden by any trees, or it won't be hidden by any trees. It will be very apparent.
At the
Work's been at the Molly Drive side of things.
Yeah.
But so going backwards, you said the final design of in fall of 2026. Is there any, how much do you think the final design would differ from what's being proposed right now?
Not very much. So we're hoping for final design basically once we complete the permitting process. So we're shooting for the spring of this year so that we can go out to bid this summer and start working at the end of this year. The design really didn't change much between the preliminary and the detailed design, other than basically just adding more detail. I don't really think, because we're really not constructing much, there would really be any changes. Certainly, we're not expecting any changes that would, make the areas larger or change the wetland impact calculations. Typically, it's just kind of adding more details for the contractor so that they understand exactly what it is that they need to do. So it could be just clarifying the type of erosion control, or clarifying the type of stone that's used in the stone ford, or some details on the proposed stairs or things like that.
All right. And then for the stone ford, like do they need any maintenance overall? Like, is it, like, what goes into it? It seems like a pretty simple structure.
Yeah, so basically, to construct it, they would just cut out part of the roadway fill. I think we have a detail, actually, for that in our drawings, which I can pull up, but yeah, it's basically a couple different types of stone that are put down so that it becomes more pervious, essentially. So there's, a geomembrane liner and then gravel on top of that. So it will need periodic maintenance to top dress it. It's, it's going to get from people walking on it, or, if there's a big storm, stone's going to move around a little bit or get compressed. So it'll need periodic maintenance, but nothing more than probably every few years, I would think.
All right. I guess I'm also wondering, like, the benefit over this from a culvert is just less maintenance, I would assume?
Yeah, so we did consider culvert. The issue is the road berm here is not very tall. So to put a culvert in, there wouldn't be a lot of height above the top of the culvert to the road. So you'd almost have to make the road higher so that you could build it up so that you could fit a culvert there. Culverts tend to just, like you said, they do have some other issues. They can get clogged. They're not as great for wildlife movement because, if you're a frog, now you have to go through this kind of dark tunnel instead of just kind of jumping over some rocks in the open air. So yeah, there are more issues with that. And so we also talked about, basically a small bridge, but that's a lot more expensive and also has other maintenance issues. So the stone ford was kind of the happy medium between those three options.
And then where does all this fill end up? Like, where are we shipping it off to?
Yeah. So right now, the plan is basically to use it as daily cover for a local landfill. It'll ultimately be up to the contractor, and they'll have to identify a location that is compliant with, state regulations for soil disposal. The plan, like I said, is that it would just be used as daily cover for landfill. But if there's another location in town that needs fill, then it could potentially go there for, reduced construction budget.
All right. I think I'm all set. Anybody else have any questions or
No, I
comments?
just had the same question you did about the stone fords, like how much maintenance are they going to require, but.
I think the stone is more natural as compared to a culvert too, right? Having the
Yeah.
stone in there.
Yep.
You might have less problem with beavers too.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That's a good point.
That's a big thing right there.
Yeah, everywhere.
Do you know if we have any issues with beavers in that area? We haven't had any.
I don't know about that area
right.
specifically. No, I haven't had anything from that area.
All right, if there's no more discussion from the commission, I'm going to read out some special conditions, and then I'll open up to the public to comment. What did I just do? All right, so conditions may include the applicant shall install and maintain perimeter controls around the area of work to prevent the deposition of debris into nearby resource areas. Perimeter controls shall remain in place until all areas of erodible materials have been stabilized at the site. These controls shall act as a limit of work. No equipment can be stored or work done past that point. Prior to any construction activity commencing, the following must be completed. ESCs shall be installed by the applicant or an agent of the applicant, and the conservation agent shall inspect and approve of the installed ESCs. And then finally, all soil that is disturbed must be stabilized and inspected by the conservation agent before the erosion controls are removed. Are you comfortable with those conditions?
Yes, thank you.
All right. And now, this is a public hearing. If anybody in the public would like to make a comment, I just ask that you go up to that podium and introduce yourself for the record. I just need a name and address.
My name's Paul Roy. I'm a Poplar Street resident. And at one point through the walkthrough, these gentlemen here and a few others, they talked about putting in a parking lot, taking out the gate at the end of Poplar Street as it is today, removing the gate, putting in a parking lot, and so that they can park cars down there and walk on the property. I didn't see that on any of the slides. Is that still in play?
No, that was taken out of the plan.
No, you're not going to take out the gate. That's my first concern.
Yeah, so we were never proposing to remove the gate. It would have been just moved back, but we have removed the proposed parking area based on the feedback we got at that meeting. Okay, so that's no longer proposed.
Myself and one of the other neighbors, we're concerned about that. And as long as the gate's going to remain in place, I have no issues.
Yep,
Thank you.
yeah, we're not proposing to change this existing swing gate at all.
All right. It's been a while, I'm familiar with the area. It's been a while since I've walked down there, but the swing gate, the current condition of it, it's in good working order, I take it?
It's an old gate.
It could be better, all right, yeah. It prevents cars from going down there,
Yeah,
but,
you couldn't get through without it being unlocked.
all right, sounds good. Any other questions or comments from the public?
Sean Hussey from 120 Poplar Street. Just one thing I asked last time during one of the meetings, due to that gate, kind of like a quarter-mile street, people, when they do get to the gate there, they tend to be a little frustrated that there's no dead-end sign and zip around, sometimes in my driveway, my neighbor's driveway, in a couple of cases right across my front lawn with all four tires. I have 3 small children under 6. All I ask is we maybe put a dead-end sign or something letting someone know that you're headed for a gate. Because there's plenty of places to turn around other than down where all the residents are. There's a couple cut-throughs by the softball field, the Elks parking lot, just something down there just so people know. So they're not whipping around on my front lawn. That's a concern.
So it's not quite wetlands related. I don't know if we can add a condition, but we do have somebody from the DPW. I believe you just took a note of that. That'd be great to get, a dead end sign.
We did add a dead-end sign up at South Street.
All right, so there's some work being done to hopefully prevent people from driving over your
Yeah, there
grass
previously
and stuff.
wasn't any dead-end sign at South at Poplar by the Elks, but that was added, I want to say probably about 4 or 5 months ago.
All right, so I don't know how much that has
That certainly
affected so
may be the
far.
case. I haven't noticed it, but that certainly may be the case. I know we have discussed it in the past. It did come up during one of the prior meetings, so if that is done, I appreciate it. The only other reason I would say my neighbor Paul already mentioned was the parking lot, which I'm aware was already kind of crossed off the project, which I appreciate everyone taking the feedback that we gave you. We do appreciate it. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if there's no further questions from the public, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. And could I have a motion to approve this notice of intent and land disturbance permit as discussed at this meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We don't have any admin reports or any new
I have one.
Oh, you
I
are,
have one. We scheduled the tree talk for the 18th at 2 PM. It'll be here, and I'll be sending everything out tomorrow.
all right, sounds good.
Thank you.
The next meeting is February 18th, 2026. With that, I will entertain a motion to end the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much.